I always liked doing creative things. When I was little, I would sit in front of my TV, just watching TV and like doing little drawings or like art projects or collages. Something that really sparked my passion for design was learning about my family history and seeing all these paintings in my house and learning that those were from, my great aunt or my great uncle, and that my grandmother used to sew. So when she was alive and she found out that I was sewing, she was so impressed, and it drove me to sew a little bit more and continue doing it. I really liked the gratitude and how happy it was making her. I really thought it was interesting that I was carrying on something that she had a strong passion for. So I actually was heavily deciding between political science and design, and it was actually my parents who said, you're a really creative person, you're always doing art, because I felt the need to be competitive with my siblings and match up to what they were doing and do exactly what they were doing or set myself apart in some way. My parents saw that I was creative. My parents saw that I was different than what my siblings were doing. They kind of encouraged me. They're like, anyone could do political science, but your art is very specific to you and you should stick with that. I was so inspired from my most recent collection by the theme of play. Never had such a creative outlook where I was allowed to do whatever I want with no boundaries. I took sprinkles and I sewed it into fabric and I just played around with the texture that made, and that became the inspiration for the beads that I later put into the garment. If you shake it, you can kind of hear it, which is really fun. Another thing I recently made was a gown. This was made out of scrap fabric that I got from a wedding dress store when I was buying my prom dress. I also made the pattern by hand, which means like the drafting pattern, not the physical pattern. But to make like the lace and stuff, I cut up some lace and made it into applique. And I got to wear this on the set of an Adam Sandler movie where I was a background character, which is really, really fun. Next thing I made was a bubble wrap jacket. The concept for this was protection. So I was essentially making something that would protect oneself, even though bubble wrap is so fragile. It was during COVID, so I was restrained to the materials around me, and bubble wrap was something I had a lot of because my dad had a factory where he shipped a bunch of packages from. So one thing that I vividly remember is coming back from my first ever sewing class and going to my grandparents' house and showing them what I made and just seeing their face and how happy they were. And that was a very pivotal moment for me where I realized that it's something cool, it's something creative, and it's something that they had a great appreciation for. And originally sewing is something that people did by force, they had to sew to make an income. For me, it's something that's fun, and I'm fortunate that it's a hobby that I could do and not something that I have to do. When I went to the university fair and I found out that textile design is a program, I went up to the head of Ryerson for fashion and I said, hey, I'm really interested in textile design. I'd love to know if you're offering this program. He said, why would I offer that program? It's a dying industry. Anyone that goes into that industry is not gonna make it out. Fashion isn't that big in Canada, and the textile design industry is mainly associated with fashion. So it was a really challenging decision for me towards choosing art over anything else, but I wasn't necessarily happy because there's only 2 programs in all of Canada that offer what I wanted to do, and I just wasn't in love with this school, but I really was in love with the program. So this is my thesis. My thesis is on metaphysics. I chose metaphysics because I really like philosophy, and I studied a lot of philosophy in my undergrad while taking art classes. It has to do with reality and being your true self, and I think that can be expressed a lot through fashion and clothing. You could just see a lot of different really cool colors and themes. I got some of my fabric laser printed, and these are some of the pieces that I got laser printed with a standard colored printer for fabric. Here's a little bit of what the collection would look like. Here I painted in silk. That is just a clear piece of paper of just a pattern that I made to see how it would look on paper versus on fabric. I did some embroidery here as well as here. I want to work as a textile designer. I don't want to work freelance. I want to work under a big corporation where my name isn't associated with anything, but I still know that my designs are there. It's not a confidence-based issue, but I think it takes away from the design when your name is associated with it. I have seen a lot of people buying stuff just for the name, and when I want someone to buy my product, I don't want them to be buying it because of the name. I want them to be buying it because of the design. It just doesn't become about fashion anymore. It doesn't become about design. It takes away from the meaning. I think fulfillment only comes once the production is done or once the piece is done. You can never be fully satisfied with something until you see the final outcome and you appreciate what you've done and all the work that goes into it. I feel the most fulfilled after I take a look back and I'm like, wow, I created this. I spent so much time. I spent so much effort. Seeing it come to life is really what gives fulfillment and inspires me to keep on working.